Good day, everyone. My name is Cybel Franza, and my group mate is Desconte Mark John and Dimba Christine. Um, we tackled the topic of American Society for Testing and Materials. So first, American Society for Testing and Materials, or ASTM, is currently known as ASTM International. American Society for Testing and Materials is a developer of international voluntary consensus standards. ASTM standards are developed by committees of relevant industry professionals who meet regular in an open and transparent process to deliver standards, test methods, specifications, guides, and practices. Next. So in the first topic, D4043 to 96, standard guide for selection of aquifer test method in determining hydraulic properties by well techniques. This standard is guide for selection of aquifer test method in determining hydraulic properties by well techniques. So in the scopes, it guides an integral part of series of standards that are being prepared on the institute determination of hydraulic properties of aquifer system by single or multiple well tests. These guides provide guidance for development of a conceptual model of field site and selection of an analytical test method for determination hydraulic properties. These guides does not establish a fixed procedure for determination of hydrologic properties. At sa scope niya, in the first series, ito yung mga guide kung saan paano ma-concept yung aquifer para mapagana yung hydraulic properties niya. And 1.2, the values stated in SI units are to be regarded as standards. Next. This is in the third limitation. Well techniques have limitation in determination of hydraulic properties of groundwater flow system. Ito yung limitation niya, dito yung tinitignan nila kung paano nagpo-flow yung tubig sa ilalim, paano umiikot para mapaano yung hydraulic. These limitations are related primarily to the simplifying assumption that implicit in each test method that the response of an aquifer system to stress is not unique therefore. So sa system must be known sufficiently to select the proper analytical method. In 1.4, this standard does not purport to address all of the safety concern. If any associated with its use, it is responsibility of the user of this standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices and determine the applicability of regulatory limitation prior to use. In 1.5, ito yung organization kung saan ginaguide nila kung ano yung mga nakuwang information or series of option and does not recommend a specific course of action. And this document cannot replace education or experience and should be used in conjunction with professional judgment. Not all aspects of this guide may be applicable in all circumstances. This ASTM is not intended to represent or replace the standard of care by which advocacy of a given professional service must be judged. Nor should this document be applied without consideration of project's many unique aspects. The word standard in the title of this document means only that the document has been approved through the ASTM consensus process. Ayun nga yung standard na salita nga daw. Yung standard na salita sa title. These are some terminology that we get in ASTM. So the definition, aquifer, confine an aquifer bounded above and below by containing beds in which the static head is above the top of the aquifer. So yung aquifer daw yung nagbabounded sa taas papuntang below sa aquifer. So in 3.1.2, aquifer can confine an aquifer that has a water table Barometric efficiency. This is the ratio of change in depth to water. Uh, Conceptual model as ito na yung representation of hydrogeological settings. Control well, well by which the aquifer is stressed. For example, pumping, injection, or change head. Hydraulic conductivity. Field aquifer test. Saan tinatesting yung mga volume ng water. 3.1.8. Observation well. A well open to all part of an aquifer. Piezometer. A device used to measure static head at point in the subsurface. Specific capacity. The rate of discharge from a well divided by drawdown of the water level. Specific storage. The volume of water released from or taken into the storage per unit volume of the porous medium per unit change in it. Yung specific storage dito yung kung saan sinusukat nila. Specific yield, the ratio of the volume water that saturated rock or soil will yield by gravity to the volume of rock or soil. In the field, specific yield, generally it determined by test unconfined aquifers and represent the change that occurs in the volume of water in the storage per unit area of unconfined aquifer as the result of unit change in head. Next. Significance and use. In a significant and use, this is a test method that control the field experiment made to determine the approximate hydraulic properties of water-bearing material. The hydraulic properties that can be determined are specific to the test method. The hydraulic properties that can be determined are also dependent upon the instrumentation of the field test. This knowledge of the aquifer system at the field site and conformance of the hydrogeological condition at the field site to the assumption of the test method. Ito yung procedure niya, 5.1. The procedure for selection of an aquifer test method or methods is primarily based on selection of a test method that is compatible with the hydrogeology of the proposed test site. Secondary, the test method is selected on the basis of the testing condition specified by the test method, such as the method of stressing or causing water level changes in the aquifer and the requirements of a test method for observation of water level response in the aquifer. 5.2 is a pre-test selection procedure. So the aquifer will test methods in a highly specific to the assumption and reliability of determination of hydraulic properties. It depends upon conformance of the hydrologic site. Kung saan yung mas maganda yung tubig, mas maganda itayo yung hydrological, yung, like tulad sa mga dam, ilog, basta yung may tubig na mapagkukunan. A conceptual understanding of hydrogeology of the aquifer system at the prospective test site should be gained in a much detail as possible from existing literature and data in a site reconnaissance. This is a table of aquifer test method kung saan yung fracture aquifer fracture aquifer, single aquifer, isotropic aquifer, lateral boundary, confined aquifer, leaky aquifer, storage in. Then the next method is the standard test method the next method is B40, 44 to 96. Standard method, test method, field procedure for instantaneous change in head slab. In the head slab test for determining hydraulic, this scope, these methods cover the field procedure for performing an in situ instantaneous change in head slab test. Kasi pina-perform ang isang head slab or tinetest nila sa isang hydrogeology. In 1.2, this method this method is used in conjunction with an analytical procedure such as a method test method D4104 to determine aquifer properties and the value and the units and the value stated in the essay units are to be regarded as a standard. So in 1.4, this standard does not support to address all of the safety concerns. Again, if any associated with its use, it is the responsibility of the user of this standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices and determine the applicability of regulatory limitations prior to use. Next. Some terminology, again, definition, control well by which the aquifer is stressed. For example, ito yung nagpapump, nag-injects or nag-change ng taas nila. Hydraulic conductivity, field aquifer test, kung saan sinusukat ulit yung volume ng water at the existing kinematic viscosity that will move in a unit time under a unit hydraulic gradient through a unit area measured at right angles to the direction of flow. And then the observation well open to all part of an aquifer. Isang inobserbahan nila yung daloy sa yung paano gumagana. Ayun nga, overdump. Well response characterized by water level returning to the static level in approximately exponential manner following a sudden change in water level. See comparison under dump well and slug. This is a volume of water or solid object that used to induce a sudden change of head in a well. Yung slug yung parang nagpapalakas ng flow ng water. May nagpapalakas ng flow, walang parang. Next. 3.1.6 storage coefficient. The volume of water an aquifer releases from or takes into storage per unit surface area of the aquifer per unit change in head for a confined aquifer, it is equal to product of specific storage and aquifer thickness. For unconfined aquifer, the storage coefficient is approximately equal to the specific. Transmissibility, the volume of water at the existing kinematic viscosity that will move in the unit time under a unit hydraulic agent through a unit width of the aquifer. Under dump well, characterize the water level oscillating about the static water level following a sudden change in water level. This for comparison over dump well. Next. Summary of test method. These methods describe the field procedure involved in conducting an instantaneous head slug. When the slug test methods, it involves causing a sudden change in head in a control well and measuring the water level response within that control well. So head change may be induced by suddenly injecting or removing a known quantity or slug of water into the well, rapid removal of a mechanical slug from below the water level. And this is increasing or decreasing the water pressure in well or of a mechanical slug into water column. The water level response in the well is a function of the mass of water in the well and the transmissibility and coefficient of storage of the aquifer. One method of analysis of the data from this field practice is described the method D4104. Next. Ito yung mga significance and use niya. Yung slug test field procedure, ginagamit siya sa conjunction para matest nila yung method ng D4104 and to provide quick and relative inexpensive estimates of transmissibility. And the slug test provides an advantage over pumping test in that it does not require the disposal of the large quantities of water that may be produced. In 5.3, slug tests may be made in the aquifer materials of lower hydraulic conductivity than generally considered suitable for hydraulic testing with pumping tests. Next. The apparatus na kung saan yung equipment na ginagamit nila, slug inducing equipment. Ito yung method na i-describe ng mga type of equipment na ginagamit because of the infinite variety of testing condition and because similar results can be achieved with the different apparatus. Engineering specification for apparatus are not appropriate This test method specifies that the result to be achieved by the equipment to satisfy the requirements of the practice. And water level measurement equipment. Yung water level measurement equipment, these methods are water level measure kung saan minimeasure nila dependent on the method selected for injection or withdrawal of water and the nature of response of the well. Ayun nga, kung saan, di ba, kung saan yung tubig na mas maganda yung ano ng aquifer nila. For an open well test, that is where access to the water level is open to the surface measure water levels manually as described in the test method D4750 by an automatic recording device linked to a float or with a pressure transducer linked to the data logger or display device. This pressure transducer linked to a data logger will be necessary for a test in a closed well in which water level changes are induced by a vacuum or pressure on the control well. Next. Procedure. In a procedure, this a cause of change in water level. It's either or umangat or nagbawas by one following methods. Water slug. Ito yung in-inject or withdraw ng water of a known quantity into or from the control well. Mechanical slug, inject or withdraw a mechanical slug below or above the water level. Third is the E4015 to 96 reapproved 2002. This standard test method, field procedure for withdrawal and injection. Well test determining hydraulic properties of aquifer systems. Next. Again, the scope. The method that describes the field procedure for selecting well location, that controlling discharge or injections rates and measuring water. Able used to analyze the hydraulic properties. 1.2, the method that used in conjunction with analytical procedures such as test methods in the T4105 or 4106 to determine the aquifer properties. 1.3, the appropriate field and analytical procedure are selected as described in Guide D4042. And the units that regarded as a standard is SI units. Next. The last, this standard does not support to address all of the safety concerns, if any, associated with its use. It is the responsibility of the user of the standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices to determine the applicability of regulatory limitation prior to use. Some terminology. Aquifer again. Aquifer is bounded above and below by confining beds in it which static head in above the top of the aquifer. Confining bed, hydrogeological unit of the less permeable material bounding one or more aquifers, and the control well by which the head and flow in the aquifer is changed. Hydraulic conductivity, observation well, and isometer. Next. Specific storage, the volume of water released from or taken into storage per unit volume of the porous medium per unit change in head. Storage coefficient, when the volume of water an aquifer releases from or it takes into the storage per unit per surface area of the aquifer unit change in head. Transmissibility, the volume of water at the existing kinematic viscosity that will move in a unit time under a unit hydraulic gradient through a unit width of the aquifer. The last term is for definition of other terms used in distant methods, see terminology D650. Next. Summary of the test method. In 4.1, this test method describes the field practices in conducting withdrawal and injection well test. These methods involve withdrawal of water from from or injection of water to an aquifer through a control well and measurement of the water level response in the aquifer. The significance and use withdrawal and injection well test field procedure are used with appropriate analytical procedure in appropriate hydrogeological sites to determine the transmissibility and storage coefficients of aquifers and hydraulic conductivity on confining beds. Apparatus. Various types of equipment can be used to withdraw or inject water into the control well, measure withdrawal and injection rates, and measure the water levels. Control well naman. Discharge or injection well test method. Discharge or injection well test methods require that the water be withdrawn from or injected in this single well. In a control well, ito yung kung saan dinidrill nila o magbubutas sila para matransmit mo yung water from tubig from aquifer, and usually the entire thickness of the aquifer yan at rates such as that measurable water level change will occur at observation. This is a control well, should be as efficient. Dito yung kung saan nagbabawas sila ng head loss between sa ng aquifer. Next. Yung observation ng pabalik nga ako. Sa observation naman, or tinatawag nilang piezometer, this is a numbers of observation wells and their distance from the control well and their screen's interval may be dependent upon the test method to be employed. And naka-refer to sa mga next report. Control well pump, a pump capable or of withdrawal upon constant or predetermined variable rate of water from the control well. This control well pump, ito yung mga motor niya kung saan nagpapump, indicate the size for the same pumping rate and lift. The pump or motor must be equipped with control mechanism to adjust discharge or rate in the case of diesel, gasoline, or natural gas fuel engines. Yung throttle niya settings should allow for small adjustment in pumping rates. Next. Yung control well pala, ito yung nagko-control, yung control well, yun yung nagko-control ng aquifer. In procedure, again, withdrawing or injecting, withdrawing or injecting water from the aquifer. Again, ito yung nagre-regulate the rate at which water is withdrawn from or injected into the control well throughout the test. The short term is discharge should not vary more than 10% about the mean discharge. Measure discharge frequently. Example, every 5 minutes, and if necessary, adjust discharge during the beginning of the test. When the discharge becomes more stable, reduce the frequency of adjustment and check discharge at least once every 2 hours throughout the test. Next. In the procedure of measuring water level, it measures the water level in each observation well at approximately logarithmic intervals of time. Measure at least 10 data points. And duration of pumping phase of test. Make preliminary analysis of the aquifer test data during the test using the appropriate test methods such as test methods for 105. Next. These are typically measured frequency. In frequency, one measurement every elapsed time for the first. The example is 30 seconds. In elapsed time is 3 minutes. In 1 minute, 3 to 15 minutes. in 5 minutes are 15 to 60 minutes. 10 minutes is 60 to 120 minutes. And the 20 minutes is 2 to 3 hours. Habang bumaano yung frequency ng measurement niya, yung elapsed time niya, mas nadadagdagan yung oras. Next. Last, I mean, D4104 to 96 standard test methods. The determining transmissibility of non-leaky confined aquifers by over-damp well response to instantaneous change in head or in slug test wall. Again, the scope yung methods niya is cover determination of transmissibility naman from the measurement of force free and response of well aquifer system to a sudden change of water level in a well. The analytical procedure in this test method is used in conjunction with the field procedure in test method. Next. Limitation. And the limitation of slug tests are considered to provide an estimate of transmissibility, and the value stated again is SI units are to be regarded as a standard. Next. This standard does not support to address all of the safety concerns, if any, associated with its use. It is a responsibility of the user of this standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices and determine the applicability of regulatory limitation prior to use. Next. Terminology. This again, aquifer, confining bed, control well. Next. And head static. Ito yung saan yung height ng standard data of the surface of a column of water. It's liquid that can be supported by the static pressure at a given point. Hydraulic conductivity. With aquifer test, the volume of water at the existing kinematic viscosity that will move in a unit time under a unit hydraulic gradient through a unit area measured at the right angles to the direction of flow. Observation well, a well open to all part of an aquifer. Overdamp well response, it's characterized by water level returning to the static level in an approximately exponential manner following of sudden change in water level. Slug, a volume of water, solid object used to induce a sudden change of head in well. And the specific storage, the volume of water released from or taken into storage per unit volume of the porous medium per unit change in head. And this is a summary of test method. These test methods describe the analytical procedure for analyzing data collected during an instantaneous head slug test using an overdamp well. The field procedures in conducting a slug test are given in test method D4044. The analytical procedure consists of analyzing the recovery of water level in the well following the change in water level induced in the well. Next. This is a solution of Cooper ETAL. Is as follow. H is equal to H of 0 over 5, or the integral of infinity over 0 is xp quantity negative du squared over ano tawag dyan? Ayan, where next muna. The significance of use sa assumption of solution of copper et al. And the head change into the control well is instantaneous change change at time when time is t is equal to 0. Well, it's of finite diameter and fully penetrates the aquifer. Flow in the non-leaky aquifer is radial 5.2 implication of consumption. And the mathematical equation applied ignore inertial and assume the water level returns the static level in the approximately exponential manner. Next. I'm 5.2.2. The assumption are applicable to artisan or confined condition and fully penetrating wells. However, this test method is commonly applied to partially penetrating wells and unconfined aquifers. As pointed out by Cooper et al., determination of storage coefficient by this method has questionable reliability because of the similar shape of the curves, whereas determination of transmissivity is not a sensitivity to choosing the correct curve. Next. Ayan, the procedure, ito yung ground surface niya. Ground surface, this sa ilalim niya yung water level and the static water level, yung naka-slant na nakikita nyo. Confining bed, that is yung may mga gwet-gwet and the confined aquifer. Yung tubig umaangat papuntang water level pag nag-inject na siya ng slag. Yung slag niya. Next. Prepare a semi-logarithmic plot of a set type curves of values of f dA is equal to h over h of o on the arithmetic scale as a function of b. In the table niya, ito yung mga value ng Berger-Hoff, Bredehoff niya, saka yung from Cooper, Bredehoff, and Papadopoulos.
So, good day everyone. Let's continue to our report. Number 7, D4630 to 96, which is the standard test method for determining transmissivity and storage coefficient of low permeability rocks by in situ measurement using the constant head injection test. So 1.1 test method. The constant pressure injection test method is used to determine the transmissivity and storativity of low permeability formation surrounding pack of interval. The advantage of the method are: number one, it avoids effect of well bore storage. Number two, it may be employed over the wide range of rock mass permeabilities. And number three, it is it is considerably shorter in duration than the conventional pump and slug test used in more permeable rocks. 1.2 analysis. The transient water flow rate data obtained using the suggested test method are evaluated by the curve matching technique described by Jacob and Lohan and extended to analysis of single fractures. If the water flow rate attains steady state, it may be used to calculate the transmissivity of the test interval. So next is scope 1.1. This test method covers a field of procedure of determining the transmissibility and storativity of geological formation having permeabilities lower than 10 raised to 3 meter squared 1 millidarcy using constant air injection. And 1.2, the transmissivity and storativity values determined by this test method provide a good approximation of the capacity of the zone of interest to transmit water. If the test intervals are representative of the entire zone and the surrounding rock is fully water saturated. 1.3 units, the values stated in SI units are to be regarded as standard. No other units of measurements are included in this standard. Reporting test result of these units other than SI shall not be regarded as non-conformance with this standard. Next. All observed and calculated values shall be conform to the guidelines for significant digit and rounding established in practice D 6026 1.4.1. The procedures used to specify how data are collected, recorded, and calculated in this standard are regarded as the industry standard. In addition, a representative of the significant digit that generally should be retained. 1.5. This standard does not does not purport to address all of the safety concern, if any, associated with this issue. It is the responsibility of other users of this standard to establish appropriate safety, health, and environmental practices and determine the applicability of the regulatory limitation prior to use. Next. 5.6. This international standard was developed in accordance with the internationally recognized principles and standardization established in the design of principle of for the development of international standard guides and recommendation is issued by the World Trade Organization Technical Barriers to Trade Activity Committee. Right. D4631 to 95. Standard test method for determining transmissivity and storativity of low permeability rocks by in situ measurement using pressure pulse technique. Scope 1.1. This test method covers a field procedure for determining the transmissivity and storativity of geological formation having permeability lower than 10 to 3 meters squared using the pressure pulse technique. 1.2. Transmissivity and storativity values determined by its test method provide a good approximation of the capacity of the zone of interest to transfer water if the test interval are representative of the entire zone and the surrounding rocks is fully water saturated. So 1.3, the values stated in SI unit are to be regarded as the standard. Okay. 1.4, this standard does not support to address all the safety concern, if any, associated with its use. It is the responsibility of the user to uh, uh, of this standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices and determine the applicability of regulatory limitation prior to use. Next. Number 9, the D4750 dash 87 standard test method for determining subsurface liquid levels in a borehole or monitoring well or the observation well. The scope is test method describe the procedures for measuring the level of liquid in a borehole or well and determining the stabilized well of liquid in a borehole. 1.2, the test method applies to boreholes case or uncase and monitoring wells, observant wells that are vertically or sufficiently vertical to flexible measuring device can be lowered into the hole. 1.3, borehole liquid level measurements obtained using this test method will not be necessarily correspond to the level of the liquid in the vicinity of the borehole unless sufficient time has been lowered uh, for the level to reach equilibrium position. And 1.4, this test method generally is not applicable for determination of pore pressure changes due to changes in stress condition of the earth material. And 1.5, this test is not applicable for uh, concurrent determination of multiple liquid levels in a borehole. 1.6, the values stated in each pound units are to be regarded as the standard. 1.7, this standard does not support to address all the safety problems, if any, associated with its issues. It is the responsibility of the user of this standard to establish appropriate safety, health, and practices and determine the applicability of regulatory limitation prior to use. Um, Next. And also this test method covers an analytical procedure for determining the transmissivity of a confined aquifer. This test method is used to analyze data from the recovery of water levels following pumping or injection of water to or from the control well at a constant rate. 1.2. The analytical procedure given in this test method is used in conjunction with the field procedure in test method D4050. So 1.3, limitation, the valid use of this recovery method is limited to determination of transmissivities for aquifers in hydrogeologic settings with a reasonable correspondence to the assumption of this theory. So 1.4, the values stated in SI units are to be regarded as standard. And next 1.5. This standard does not ask for to address all of the safety concern, if any, associated with its use. It is the responsibility of the user of the standard to establish workplace safety and health practices and determine the applicability of the required regulatory limitation prior to use. Yan. Ito kanina. 10. Number 10. D5269 to 96. Standard test method for determining transmissivity of non-leaky confined aquifers by this recovery method. This method covers an analytical procedure for determining the transmissivity of confined aquifer. This test method is used to analyze data from the recovery of the water levels following pumping or injection of water to or from a control well at the constant rate. Basa ko na to kanina. Yan. Next is number 11. D5270 to 96. For the standard test method for determining transmissivity and storage coefficient of bounded non-leaky confined aquifers. 1.5. This method covers an analytical procedure for determining the transmissivity, storage coefficient, and possible location boundaries for a confined aquifer with a linear boundary. 1.2. The analytical procedure in this test method is used to conjunction with this field procedure test method D40P. 1.3. Limitations. The valid use of this test method is limited to determination of transmissivities and storage coefficient for aquifers and hydrogeologic settings with a reasonable correspondence to assumption of this non-equilibrium method, except that the aquifer limited is area extended by a linear boundary that fully penetrates the aquifer. 1.4. This standard does not purport to address all of the safety concern if any is used. It is the responsibility of the user of the standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices and determine the applicability of regulatory limitations prior to use. This test described the procedure for conducting a specific capacity test, computing the specific capacity of a control well, estimating the transmissivity in the vicinity of the control well. Specific capacity is the well yield per unit drawdown at the identified time after pumping started. 1.2. This test method is used in conjunction with test method D4050 for conducting withdrawal and injection well test. 1.3. The method of determining transmissivity from specific capacity is a variation of the non-equilibrium method of this um, for determining transmissivity and storage coefficient of an aquifer. The, this non-equilibrium method is given in test method E4106. And lastly, number 13, E5473 to 93, or the standard test method for analytical procedure for analyzing the effects of partial penetration of control well and determining the horizontal and vertical hydraulic conductivity in a non-leaky confined aquifer. 1.1. This test method covers an analytical solution for determining the horizontal and vertical hydraulic conductivity of an aquifer by by analysis of the response of the water levels in the aquifer to discharge from a well that partially penetrates the aquifer. 1.2 Limitations. The limitations of this technique for determination of the horizontal and vertical hydraulic conductivity of aquifers are primarily related to correspondence between the field situation and simplifying assumption of these test methods. 1.3. The values stated in either inch or pound or SI units are to be regarded separately as the standard. The values given in parentheses are for information only. 1.4. This standard does not support to address all the safety problems, if any, associated with its use. It is the responsibility for the user of this standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices and determine the applicability of the regulatory limitations prior to use. Yeah.
So, good day, everyone. I'm Game back Christine, and I will continue the discussion about the American Society for Testing and Materials. So, the continuation will be the B5716 to 95, which is the standard test method for measuring the rate of well discharge by circular orifice weir. So, for this one, the scope, next po. So the scope of this topic will be it will discuss the test method, the significance and use, apparatus, and the procedures. So let's now go first with the scope. So the scope will be that again the test method that covers construction and operation of a circular orifice weir for measuring the discharge from a well. And this method is a part of series of standards prepared on the in situ determination of hydraulic properties of aquifer system by single or multiple well test. The test method is common to a number of aquifer test method and to evaluation of well and pump performance. The limitations will be it is limited to the description of a method common to hydraulic engineering for the purpose of groundwater discharge measurement in temporary or test conditions. Next po. Again, for the scope there will be a much information presented in the test method based on work performed by a civil engineering department of Purdue University during the late 1940s. The values also stated in each pound units are two regarded as the standard. The SI units given in parentheses are for information only. The standard does not purport to address all of the safety concerns, if any, associated with its use, It is the responsibility of user of this standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices and determine the applicability of regulatory limitations prior to use. Next po. So the summary of test method, it involves pumping a control well at a constant or variable rate for a given period of time. Discharge is also through an orifice weir that allows determination of the discharge rate. So for the next one will be, it provides design information for construction of an orifice weir. It also describes setup, operation, inspection, calculation of discharge, and reporting. So, ayun. Next po, sa may picture. Yan. Thank you. So, this one will be the construction of a circular orifice weir. Ayan po yung ginamitan ng test method for this topic. Next po. So, the apparatus that they use, the apparatus that they use will be the construction of a circular orifice weir, orifice plate, discharge pipe, manometer, and the water level in the manometer, next po, indicates the pressure head in the approach pipe when water is being pumped through the orifice. For any given size of an orifice discharge pipe, the rate of flow through the orifice varies with the pressure head as measured in the manner. Ipapakita po yun sa table 1. And the diameter of orifice should be less than 80% of the inside diameter of the approach channel pipe. So next po. So the procedures that's been conducted will be setting up the apparatus, and the apparatus should be set up so that the orifice pipe is horizontal and the discharge is unimpeded. Uses combination of pipe and orifice diameter so that the anticipated head will be at least 3 times the diameter of the orifice. The orifice plate must be vertical and centered in the discharge pipe. So dito sa procedure, parang pinapakita, again, procedure itself, parang ipinapakita lang dito kung paano tinest or kung ano yung ginawa sa test method for this topic. So again, the next one will be the equipment should be inspected to minimize the potential of wear, damage, or misuse causing increased head loss that will bias the results. Initiate flow through the discharge pipe. Check that the manometer is free of air bubbles. Record the manometer level. Ayan. Tapos, next po. Ayan. That will be kung nakikita nyo, ayan po yung table na ginamit para matest yung circular orifice weir. Ayan po. So the next one will be the D5785 to 95, a standard test method for determining transmissivity of confined non-leaky aquifers by under-dumped well response to instantaneous change in head. Next po. So again, i-discuss natin ulit dito, which is the whole discussion will be the scope, the significance and use, the apparatus, and the procedures. So again, going back, the scope of this will be again, for the test method, it covers determination of transmissivity from the measurement of the damp oxidation about the equilibrium water level of a well aquifer system to sudden change of water in a level. The analytical procedure is used in conjunction with a field procedure that will be on test method D4044, which is na-discuss na ng mga reporters a while ago for collection test of data. Next po. So the limitation. Next po. And so for the limitation, those practice may be acceptable for application under condition in which the aquifer is stratified and horizontal hydraulic conductivity is much greater than vertical hydraulic conductivity. Oh, so in such case, the test would be considered to be the representative of the average hydraulic conductivity of the portion of the aquifer adjacent to the open interval of the well. So, next po. Ayan. So, a more rigorous analysis for this, the response of wells to a sudden change in water level by KEEP indicates that the method presented by a Van der Kamp matches to the solution of KEEP when the damping parameter values are less than about 0.2 n time greater than of the first peak of the oscillation. So it is the responsibility of the users of this standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices and determine the applicability of regulatory limitations prior to use. So this will be the summary of test method. Again, ginamitan to nung test method B4044 which is discuss na nung mga reporters kanina. And those analytical procedure consist of analyzing the response of water level in the well following the change in the water level induced in the well. So the theory of this will be the equations that govern the response of well and the instantaneous change in head are treated the length by KEEP. Next one. The significance and use. So, ito yung significance niya. The assumption of the physical system are given as follows. The aquifer is of uniform thickness and confined by impermeable beds above and below. The aquifer is of constant homogeneous porosity and matrix compressibility and of homogeneous and isotropic hydraulic conductivity. The origin of the cylindrical coordinate system is taken to be on the well bore axis at the top of aquifer. The aquifer is fully screened. Next po, procedure na po. Isa pa po. Yan. So the procedure ang procedure lang na ginawa for this is the overall procedure consists of conducting the slug test field procedure. Tapos inanalyze lang yung field data na nakuha sa slug testing. Tapos inaddress siya sa test method na ito. Pabalik po ng onte. Isa lang. Yan. Thank you po. So for D5786 to 95, the standard practice for constant drawdown test in flowing wells for determining hydraulic properties of aquifer system. So the scope for this will be next po. Balik po ng onte. Ay, next po. Isa pa. Yan. So the scope for this will be ASTM or American Society for Testing and Materials is not intended to represent or replace the standard of care by which the adequacy of a given professional service must be judged, nor should this document be applied without consideration of project's many unique aspects. The word standard in the title of this document means only that the document has been approved through the ASTM consensus process. Next po. So the summary of this practice, it describes the field procedures for conducting an aquifer test. Ayun, nag-conduct lang, dito sa practice na to, nag-conduct lang sila ng aquifer test. That is the head in the well remains above the top of the well casing. Ini-involves din dito yung inducing ng constant drawdown at saka yung measuring para ma-vary nila yung discharge rate sa control well. Ayan. Next one, significance and use. The constant drawdown test procedure are used with appropriate analytical procedures to determine transmissivity, hydraulic conductivity, and storage coefficient of aquifers. So the apparatus that's been used will be the next po. Next po. Yan. So the apparatus that's been used will be the standpipe, pressure measurement, control well, and control well. So those three are things that's been used para magawa tong practice na to sa test method na to. And yung following methods nitong topic na to ay na-discuss na nung mga reporters kanina, which is yung D4750. So for the standpipe, it extend the above of the elevation of the head in the control well. This will allow for direct measurement of the water level following methods described again in the test method D4750. So for the pressure measurement, a pressure gauge may be installed below the shut-in mechanism in the control well. It determines the head elevation by adding the pressure reading to the elevation of the sensor of pressure gauge. For the control well, next po. Ayan, for the control well, it is the development should be as complete as possible to eliminate the additional production of sediments and consequent changes in well efficiency during that test. And control well is also known as a shell head elevation para mag-add ng pressure reading sa elevation ng sensor ng pressure gauge para ma-drilled and completed yung mga transmits ng water na galing sa aquifer. So the next one will be the procedure. Yan. So the procedure, meron siyang, wait lang. Parang dalawa yung test na ginawa dito, which is yung the pre-test and saka yung mismong test na. Sa pre-test, yung ginawa nila is yung selecting aquifer test method, field reconnaissance, next po, construction of control well, and the test of control well. Ayan, yung apat na yon, yun yung ginawa nila sa pre-test. So yung testing the control well by allowing the well to flow and then stopping the flow. It is based on the recovery response to make a preliminary estimate of the hydraulic properties of the aquifer and estimate the initial flow rate from the control well expected during the aquifer test. Ayan. Also, next, ayan. They test, again, for the pre-test, there is a testing observation wells and measuring the pressure head in the shot control and control well and observation wells para ma-determine yung trend ng water levels bago pa yung commencement ng test. So this period should be at least equal to the length of the following portion of the test. Ginamitan to ng piezometer para mag-reflect yung water level sa aquifer during nung testing. Tapos alternatively, kung yung observation wells nung are nagfo-flow, they will measure their response in manner similar to the described for the control well. Tapos i-redevelop nila yung wells or the piezometers will with unusually sluggish response. So next one. For the test procedures, 1, 2, 3, 4. For the test procedures, may apat na yugto yung or steps para sa test procedure which is yung nagbase sila sa pre-testing. Syempre, bago mag-test procedure, may pre-test. So yung sa testing naman, nagbase sila dun sa pre-test and dun sa mga conceptual model of the site. Given yon sa D4043. And tapos nag-select sila doon sa duration ng mga test. Now, yung shut in the control well, it completely stopped the flow from the control well prior to conducting the test for a period at least as long as the anticipated duration of the following portion. And then after nun, minasure nila yung discharge rate, tapos minasure nila yung water level. Next po. Siyempre, dahil may pre-test, may testing, there is also a post-testings procedures which is yung ginagawa after na nung practice nila. Which is yung tabulating the water levels, tabulating the rate of discharge, preparing a written description or yung tinatawag natin na written report, and also the plotting the rate of discharge versus the time. Ayun po yung pre-test, testing, and the post-testing procedures. So next one will be the D5850 to 95 standard test method for determining transmissivity, storage coefficient, and anisotropy ratio from a network of partially penetrating wells. So again, we will discuss next po. We will discuss the scope. So again, these test methods will cover an analytical procedures just like yung mga naunang test. This will have an analytical procedure for determining the transmissivity, storage coefficient, and the ratio of vertical to horizontal hydraulic conductivity of confined aquifer using observation, well-droned measurements from a constant rate pumping test. There will be an analytical procedure. The limitations will be the technique of determining of the horizontal and vertical hydraulic conductivity of aquifer. The values is stated in inch-pound units, and the standard does not support to address all the safety concerns again, and if any associated with its use. It is responsibility of the user of the standard to establish appropriate safety and health practices and determine the applicability of the regulatory limitation prior to use. Next po. For the significance and use, ayan. An important restriction for the week's distance drawdown method is that the observation wells must have identical construction or yung screened intervals, kailangan ma-observe talaga siya. So, every intervals dapat na-screen siya. And 2 or more of the observation well must be located at a distance from the pump well beyond the effects of a partial penetration. And this procedure describes in the test method is the general distance drawdown method, in that it works in theory for any observation well configuration incorporating 3 or more wells, provided some of wells are within the zone where flow is affected by partial penetration. Next po, yung apparatus naman na ginamit dito. Next pa po. Yan. So, yung apparatus na ginamit dito is yung withdrawal test na given siya sa test method D4050. Yung apparatus dito ay below are those components of the apparatus that require special attributes for the specific construction. Again, gumamit na naman sila ng construction of the control well. And also, next po, construction and placement of observation wells. And This procedure will work for arbitrary positioning of observation wells and placement of their screens, as long as the three or more observation wells. Mhm. As long as the three observation wells are used and some of observation wells fall inside the zone where flow is affected by partial penetration. That is the area where significant vertical flow component exists. Next po. And then yung optimum results, ginamitan siya ng minimum 4 observation wells, incorporating 2 pairs of observation wells na located sa 2 different distances from the pumped well, and both within the zone where flow is affected by partial penetration. So next po, procedure. So for the procedure, again, there will be pre-test, pero hindi na nila hindi na umabot sa testing and sa post-testing. So for the pre-test preparation, pumping test guidelines and post-test procedure associated with pumping test itself are described in test method D4050. So ayon, yung testing and post-testing ay na-discuss na sa D4050. So it verifies the quality of the data set, review the record of measured flow rates to make sure the rate was held constant during the test. Finally, the check background water level fluctuations observed prior to or following pumping tests to see if the adjustment must be made to observe drawdown values to account for background fluctuations, and if appropriate, adjust the observed drawdown values accordingly. Next po will be the D5881 or 5881, determining the transmissivity of confined non-leaky aquifers by critically damp well response to instantaneous change in head. Again, the scope will be the test method that they do, the analytical procedures, next po, the limitations, next po, next pa po. Ayan, the limitations, this, and the limitations, ayun ulit. So, again, ang ginawa lang nila dito is yung slug testing. Again, they also need the massive interpretation and observation for this one. So for the summary of test method, diniscuss to yung the rest ng procedures na ginawa dito ay makikita siya sa D4044, which is again na-discuss na. So the analytical procedure consists of analyzing the response of water level in the well following the change in water level induced in the well. Yung theory dito is that the equation that govern the response of well to an instantaneous change in head are treated at length by Keep. Next po is yung significance and use. So these are all of the assumption ng physical system. There are 6 assumptions, as you can see in the table, in the presentations. Ayan po yung significance and use. So the next one will be the next po, D5912 to 96, standard test method for determining hydraulic conductivity of an unconfined aquifer by overdamped well corresponds to instantaneous change in head. Again, next po, for the scope, next pa po, ginamitan ulit ng test method, analytical procedures, and the limitations are slag tests are considered to provide an estimate of hydraulic conductivity. The determination of storage coefficient is not possible with this test method. Kasi yung volume ng aquifer material na tinest, yung maliliit lang. Yung values nun ay nag-obtain ng representative of materials which is very near the open portion of the control well. Next po, summary of test method. This method describes an analytical procedure for analyzing data collected following an instantaneous change in head or the slag testing in an overdamped well. Again, makikita siya sa D4044. Next po, which is significance and use. This will be the assumption ng solution, the implication of the assumption. Next po, which is the procedures. Yan. So, overall, yung procedure, nagko-consist siya on conducting the slag testing field procedures, which is again, makikita sa test method D4044, and the analysis of the field data that is addressed in this test method. So, next po, yung picture. Ayan po. Ayan po yung partially perforated well in unconfined aquifer with gravel pack or developed zone around perforated section. At saka yung for the analytical procedures. Ayun yung lumabas. And the last one will be the next po, 5920 to 96, which is standard test method for test of anisotropic unconfined aquifers by Newman method. Again, there will be next po, there will be a test method that will cover as an analytical procedure again for determining the transmissivity, storage coefficient, specific yield, and the horizontal to vertical hydraulic conductivity ratio of an unconfined aquifer. Also, the valid use of Newman method is limited to determination of transmissivities for aquifers in hydrogeologic settings with reasonable correspondence to the assumption of theory. And also, the value stated will be in SI units are to be regarded as standards. Next po, summary of test method. For the procedures, so for the summary of methods, this method should have been selected using guide D4043 on the basis of hydrologic characteristics of the sites. This method may also be used to analyze an injection test with the appropriate change in sign. The rate of drawdown of water levels in the aquifer is a function of the location and depths screened open intervals of the control wells, observation wells, and piezometers. So now next, significance of use. Significance and use, next po. Yan, that will be the assumption. There are 5 assumptions. And also the implications of the assumptions. Next po. Yan, that will be the significance, the implication of assumptions using the Newman method. It assumes that the control well is infinitesimal diameter. The storage in this control well may adversely affect drawdown measurements obtained in the early part of the test. Makikita siya sa D4106 for assistance in determining the duration of the effects of wellbore storage on drawdown. Next po sa picture. Ayan. Ito yung aquifer test analysis. Ito yung unang result. For the figure 2, next po. Ayan yung cross-section through a discharging well screened sa part ng unconfined aquifer. So for the apparatus, next po. Again, sa apparatus, gumamit sila ng analysis, construction of control well again, the observation wells, location of observation wells, procedures, and also the analysis. Next po, yung picture. Yung procedure muna. Yung procedure lang. So for the procedure consists of conducting the field procedure for withdrawal well test. Again, makikita siya sa test method D4050. Doon, inanalyze na yung field data and addressed in this test method. Ipapakita ko yung test method sa D4050. Kinuha ko siya, yung table nun. And again, it analyzed the field test data by plotting the data and recording parameters as specified in section 8. Next po. Ito po yun, yung data na na-analyze nila. Tsaka yung values ng construction type B curves for fully penetrating wells. Yung sunod po. Next po. Ayan. So, next po. Yun lamang po. And those are all of our reports. I hope you guys learn from us. Thank you very much for listening.